Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And here we are, straight from the cinema, from seeing The Strangers, Chapter 1.
Yeah, which is... we were trying to have this conversation before we were watching it, when we had some food, which is a future prequel and a kind of loose remake, but also some kind of I don't fucking know.
I don't know if anyone's got the answers on, but I tried to search online and everyone was giving me different. They were like, "Oh yeah, it's set in the same universe as a prequel." Well, everything in this is modern. Yeah. more modern than 2008, so it's not a prequel.
No.
But they were like, oh, it could be, so it's like a reboot, but it's still set in the same continuity. I was like, okay, I guess that could. Although there are things that are far too similar in this film. And then there was also just that it's a straight remake, and to be honest, I would say modern remake is what this is. You haven't...
I've never seen it somehow. I've never seen the original Strangers. We said we were going to cover this, and then we were going to cover the original Strangers maybe next week. Yeah. And you watched the Strangers today before we saw this, and were basically like, I just watched the same film twice.
I literally did. I didn't watch the same film. I watched a better film, and then I watched a film that is like a cheap rip-off of that film. Like, it's basically what it is. Just to be clear, I feel like because we haven't mentioned this in the first minute or so, this is the spoiler-free episode. Yeah. So do not worry about if you are going to go see it this weekend and you're worried we're going to spoil it all for you. I mean, if you've seen The Strangers, then you're already spoiled, I'm afraid.
You've already seen
I've kind of fucked it for you because it's already ruined. But, you know, I'm not saying there's not a few extra bits in there. But, yeah, it's pretty much the same film. Yeah. But anyway, we will not spoil exactly what happens to these characters in this film.
I mean, apart from, you know, the bit that is kind of exactly the same film. We're not going to do any more spoilers.
That is kind of the spoiler there. This is basically a very same film, but it's not exactly the same film.
No.
But I'm not going to go into specifics in this one as to why it is a similar film.
Well,
you haven't seen the film either. That makes it a lot harder because we'll talk about that in the spoiler-free one. But I'll try to tiptoe around.
Well, before we properly kind of get into our thoughts, remember to hit that subscribe button and please leave us a lovely review. We got plenty of fun episodes coming up, and we've done some real good fucking bangers of films recently, so go and check them out. I mean, this film was getting torn apart, so we went to see Abigail. We did a review of that, if you want to go check that out, and this was one of the trailers that was shown during the trailers. And I was like, that looks kind of cool. That looks pretty good. And then about a day or two ago, people were just saying, you know, it's derivative of The Strangers. It kind of adds nothing. It's a bit of like a lazy reboot / prequel.
Yeah.
And it's kind of avoid at all costs. What do you reckon?
And as we go into that, I mean, like as I said, I'm not someone. So I literally watched it just. So I'm not someone on the terms of the original kind of thing. I'm definitely not one of these people that's going to be nostalgic of the original. So there are lots of people maybe, you know, might have been pre-teens around it. You know, only around 15. So we would have been around that age, but we never saw. You know, we never saw it. So I haven't got the nostalgia for the original film. So you know, just taking this as the film as it was, as this film, Chapter 1. I do kind of agree that it is very derivative. It's almost as if they thought, wouldn't it be cool to do like a modern version of that? Or it was basically like, we're going to basically do very similar ideas, but we're going to add in some modernisms into it. We're going to add in some cool terms.
I can see that, yeah.
We're going to add that stuff into it, and that's going to make it more interesting, and you know, it's going to bring it up to Monday. And we're going to add in, there are a few scenes and shots and stuff like that are very different, and the setting and stuff is completely different. So you know, it's not that it's exactly the same. It just gets a bit deja vu, like if you have seen it more recently. If you've never seen it, that's where I think it's the interesting part here is that I've now seen it. You've never seen it, so it's kind of. Yours is almost interesting because for anyone who's like never seen The Strangers before, did you find it an interesting film?
It was okay. I don't think it was. I mean, there were points of it that were absolute ass. I won't go so far as saying it was completely like devoid of any tension. But I think like if you took it as just a film in itself, like I'm just going and I'm watching something that has a few creepy moments, has some action, but ultimately isn't going anywhere, then it's a very forgettable film. It doesn't commit any kind of major sins apart from a couple of moments where me and you looked at each other, and there was quite a few bits where I just gave you a very obvious look.
We'll save those bits for the
spoiler ones.
The episode, but there are some eye-rolling moments where they just make really stupid decisions, like as if like
not just stupid decisions, but also very much like, look at this. This is gonna play a part in the story. Wink, wink. Yeah. And it's there's almost like no subtlety there.
No.
So that was one thing that I felt like really stood out.
I will bring up one thing because it has nothing to do with spoilers within the thing, but I can bring it up now. Is asthma sufferers of the world,
yes,
deserve justice in horror films.
Yeah,
because they are absolutely like. What is a somewhat actual serious disease is used as a plot device. Yeah. So fucking like we both suffer from asthma in different ways, and yes, it can be terrible and it can really cause problems within your life, and some people have really severe versions of asthma. But I can't remember. There was a film. What was the other film? We watched another film recently, and we were like, "Why the fuck is it?" Oh, it was Hellraiser. Hellworld. Yeah. So we were having this conversation while watching Hellraiser. We've been slowly working our way
slowly
through the Hellraiser films. That's the Henry Cavill one, by the way. Slightly more interested than the other one.
Yeah.
We're going to do a little compilation
eventually
at some point
one day.
But again, that was another one. But it's just so it keeps popping up, and I keep feeling like I keep seeing it pop up in there.
Yeah.
I feel like it's also I've seen it in a lot more kind of not that one that's not that modern, but I've seen it in a lot of modern kind of like films, as if like it's like giving the character a personality.
Yeah,
having asthma is not a personality.
I don't know. It's like you have all your you have your caricatures. You have like the jock, the nerd, the bimbo. You have the guy with asthma. You know, it's just like it's fake.
Yeah, I guess this dude kind of falls somewhere between not quite the jock, but he's also not the nerd, but he's also an asthma sufferer.
He's the asthma.
I don't know. It's pretty much like
he's the asthma.
There's not a huge depth to these characters. We don't learn a lot about them. Which is because as my own little second point is that in the original you really find out very little about anyone. Really, you have teases of stuff, but everything's so subtly done that it's interesting.
Yeah. Here
it's not so subtly done, and you could basically read exactly who these characters are. I think very quickly. Like these are almost your stereotypical modern kind of characters that you see in TV shows and some modern horror films. Of basically like this is what a modern couple are. They are like you're almost half expecting one of them to kick into a TikTok or something. You know what I mean?
Start doing a TikTok.
Start doing a dance in the middle of waiting in the cabin. She's like, yeah, let's just do a little dance around.
Why not?
You know what I mean? It's all about like there's a lot of like phone stuff. There's a lot of kind of the Airbnb local bar. There's a lot of those kind of modern fit. Oh, look at my electric car. Oh, there's a problem with my electric car. That kind of stuff. And it's kind of like that's been added in, and then on top of the asthma sufferer of the asthma sufferers of the world, deserving justice. Did you not sit at the start of this film and just feel like you were getting kicked in the face with cliche after cliche of like basically we're in the woods?
Well, here's
like local town and stuff like that.
That's one of the things that I kind of enjoyed about the film. So here's my thing, right? And I don't know whether this is just me, my spice-addled brain, or whether this is like something that other people agree with. But you often find that, especially like if you're in this kind of like prequel territory, which it kind of hints at being and hints at not being, nobody really knows. But I went into it kind of thinking, okay, maybe this is like a prequel. Because you find out about the strangers. And I think like when you have a prequel, a lot of the time you get rid of the tension. You know that Freddy Krueger isn't going to die as a 21-year-old boy because he goes on to molest children. You know, like it's a canon event. You can't interfere with that.
Yeah.
So you have to instead do something else. You have to show the origins, you know. And I think like an often like not well thought of film, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, right?
Yeah.
It plays very similar to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. However, you get a bit of like the family origin, and you get to flesh out the characters a little bit more. And I went into this thinking, okay, like we've got this small backwards town, population of like 420 people, and they're all kind of like a bit weird, a bit hills have eyes, kind of. And it's gonna be like people from this town are doing this and setting it up. And that's one of the mysteries I had throughout the film. I was like, oh, maybe because there's the two women and the man. I was like, maybe it's the waitress, you know, or maybe it's the other couple they meet there. And I was kind of like hoping that they would play into that a little bit more, and we'd find out maybe a little bit about this town. Like, have you ever seen Eden Lake? You know?
No, I haven't seen Eden Lake, but I know what. Yeah. I know what about,
Like basically, to spoil a 20-year-old film for you, you find out about these shitbag kids kill Michael Fassbender, the actual person, and then spoiler
for a different film.
Yeah, for a different film. And then as the like woman runs into the town to get help, like they very much know the kids are shitbags, and they kill the woman. And I always thought they were going to go that route. I thought it was going to be like, it's the town that's doing it and do that. But instead, you're right. Once they got to the cabin, it kind of just settled into somebody's popping up here or there.
The opening part of this film is the main part that would be different from the original film.
Yeah.
Although, I see what you're saying about the teaser and stuff like that. But at the same time, for me personally, it just felt like every cliche that you'd expect to go into any little film. Like this is it's like taking when you're taking a film and you're taking the structure of a film and then you're building other stuff around it. I feel like you should at least try a little bit to be original. I feel like this film does not try to be original.
Oh no, I'm not saying it tried to be original.
There's no original. There's no original idea anywhere within this film. To be honest, there's nothing they do that I've either not seen in another film that's of a very similar style, or that isn't exactly in the original film of this franchise. Kind of thing. That's the only thing that was kind of getting to me, was the fact that I was just like, are we just getting? Is it like, oh yeah, it's not a cliche, because we've made it modern.
Yeah, we made it modern.
So it can't be, even though some of these cliches date back way before even The Strangers.
Yeah.
Some of these date back to what The Strangers was somewhat references, which is all the way back to like the Manfords and family murders in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Some of these cliches were in horror films back then. You know what I mean? Like, they're a long way standing, and that's not a cliche. Is a cliche because it kind of sometimes works and it works well. And I see what you're saying about like where you thought it could go, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and that almost sounds exactly what could be Chapter 2 and 3, maybe.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Chapter 2, to just say it, because it's been widely thinking. There's a reason it's called Chapter 1. It'd be really weird to go, we're just going to call it Chapter 1. There's already more chapter. No, there's no more chapter.
There's no more chapter.
It's just Chapter 1.
But that's the weird thing. It's kind of like, so you got to, like, where you want to go? You know?
Yeah, where is this franchise going is definitely a question I feel you will leave this film with, without having, again, any spoilers of where we end this film. It's definitely I can't say it majorly sets up. I think some of the opening is the only part that maybe gives some hints of maybe something that might come, but could be completely wrong. They may be going a completely different way. This doesn't give me anything to kind of like start to think about, like close up, because there is not too much that we can really say about this film, I think, without going too much into some spoilers and stuff.
Which is why
really delving into it. So that's why this is the spoiler free, and this is why you need to come back and listen to that spoiler filled episode when you can. Be a good little boy and girl now.
We're teasing you. Hanging that carrot there, you know.
But yeah, this world and where it's going. To kind of summarize a little bit, is this world does not feel like I'm like, oh my god, where's the next chapter?
Yeah.
Like, when's it coming next? Like, what's happening? It doesn't. This film has not effectively set up a trilogy.
No.
You know what I mean? This doesn't feel like the first part of the trilogy, and it doesn't feel like they've done anything new. This would have been more interesting if it was an actual prequel, I think, to the idea of what was in the original film, but this doesn't feel like a prequel.
No. Without watching the original, I already know it doesn't feel like a prequel.
But yeah, it just generally like does it. It has little hints and teasers that if you're a Strangers fan, you'll notice those kind of things. But it's more the complete lack for me with this, to just kind of sum up my thought, is just that it's a complete lack of actually trying to do anything new.
Yeah.
Like, it really doesn't, and I know it's harder for you because you haven't seen. But you're the fresh-eyed.
I'm the fresh-eyed baby.
To be the
jaded veteran.
The jaded one from literally in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, in the last 24 hours.
I've become a jaded Strangers fan in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, I know.
It
happens quick now.
I can also say already, we haven't got to feel like that. You know, upon first viewing, and we are going to cover the Strangers, I think. Anyway,
yeah.
You know, even if I've said it's similar. But and I'll probably rewatch it again to get another fresh look on it after this one. Otherwise, I might get films mixed up.
Sounds like it could be easy to do.
But you know, I definitely enjoyed the original one more, and I think there's definitely there was a more subtlety. You had better actors doing the same role, basically.
Yeah.
Somewhat, not the same role, different, but you know, same ideas in some ways. But that's the one thing that's just the stickler, is the fact that it's so similar. It's like who thought it was a good idea to make it this kind of close in a lot of ways, and not going into details about what ways yet.
I mean, yeah, I could only speak as a fresh-eyed baby boy who has yet to see the Strangers, but just kind of taking it as it was, I just felt like there were moments where there would be like some kind of tension.
Yeah.
You know, there was a couple of moments that were like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. But then there was almost like for every one of those, it almost like kind of just undid everything. You know.
Oh yeah.
There was a rather tense scene, and then after, it's just instantly undone, and me and you looked at each other like, what? What the fuck? Why would you do that? And then there's like baffling decisions that are just left in, or characters make, that don't feel like you would actually really do them. And it feels like it's very convenient, because they're like, oh, we want this to happen, so this has to happen. Even though if you were in that, and I get you have to suspend disbelief, but if you were in that situation, and these films are supposed to be grounded and realistic, and we're not dealing with supernatural beings or anything like that, we're just dealing with fucking,
as far as we know,
so far until chapter 3. It's just these weird decisions that are kept in, and I'd never say I was particularly bored, but I never found the action particularly thrilling. Apart from a couple of tense moments, I was never on the edge of my seat. I was kind of like, is this gonna end like how I know the other one ends? And then they did a little bit of a twist, but then even then we spoke about that and we were like, the fuck? You know? Yeah. So it's kind of, like you said, without going too into it.
It is kind of brought down by some really confusing decisions.
Yeah.
Definitely character-based decisions of where you are constantly questioning, like, why are we doing this? What's happened here? And you're right, not to completely on everything, but you know, there are some tense scenes. There are a couple of visual bits that I thought, oh, actually, that's quite a cool shot.
It looks kind of cool. Yeah.
You know, it has its moments. Now, this, again, to be fair, for someone who's watching this with the intention of possibly seeing it and kind of making that decision, if that's why you're listening, because I just said watching.
Yeah, watching.
Unless there's a secret camera in here that you're watching.
Yeah.
And we know that someone is.
I mean, mate, you're always being watched if you're in my house. One way or another, I'm watching you.
But, yeah, if you are listening to this, it depends on where you stand. I believe if you are a Strangers fan and you like the original film, I think that you should probably stay home and watch the original film. If I'm honest, I kind of don't see the point in anyone going out and spend money on this film if you've seen the original. Now, if you're someone who's never seen The Strangers and Rob obviously is a bit more of a well-worn. But if you are someone who's more looking for maybe like a fun little like slasher kind of jumpy kind of film, and you're not exactly like mega horror fan.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why you're listening to a horror podcast.
Yes.
So that's my main thing. It's go away. You should be listening.
But before you go away and stop listening, you subscribe and you leave us a lovely review. That's what
Make sure you do that first. But those are the kind of people that I would say you could recommend. So if you know you're going to take your partner, for instance, and they're not really into horror, they might get some kind of a jump and a kick out of this, to be fair.
Maybe, yeah.
I think maybe. But there's also the chance that I do think it has quite a bit where it goes on and kind of gets a bit interesting in some ways. And then it has a little bit of a lull. And then it maybe comes back up a little bit with the action at the end. But there is a little bit where I thought it got a little bit like, okay, we're just kind of doing the same thing for a while here, aren't we? Kind of,
Yeah.
And for a film that's only an hour and a half, it's kind of, you shouldn't really find a bit of a lull.
It should be tight.
But I found a little bit of a lull in the original as well. So, it comes around both ways. And I'm not the mega lover of, either one. But they're both, got their points. But this one is just, it's a kind of a run-of-the-mill horror. I mean, it's a maybe a date night for some teens. They'll be into it.
Yeah.
But if you're a proper horror fan, I don't think this is going to do much for you. I think you've seen everything in this film before, and I think you can probably just watch the original online.
Yeah, or probably. I very much got the impression of like an Amazon Prime streaming, like straight to streaming kind of like home invasion.
I was thinking of that as well. Actually, this did feel like having an IP and being like, well, we don't really want to spend lots of money on it, so we're going to just do it on like a Netflix version. It kind of reminded me of Netflix's Texas Chainsaw, to be honest. That's more entertaining, but it's like a cheap like copy of the original. It's like you've taken an original film, put it into AI.
Yeah.
What's that film?
Yeah.
And this is kind of what they've thrown out. We're like, can you modernise it? But also,
yeah,
I want it to be the same, but I want to modernise it. I want to bring that in. Now, type all that into your AI, and let's be honest, that's what the Texas Chainsaw that we got was. It was basically like...
It was a bit AI.
We're bringing back the characters, but we've also got this, but we also have to have cool scenes of Leatherface doing this, but we've got to have that as well.
Yeah.
But don't forget, you've got to have certain modern day gender, modern day modernisation of different characters, different features, everyone's got to have a role, but at the end of the day, none of it is more interesting than what happened in the original, because it just felt a bit... There was something off about it. What I mean?
I think this film AI
and it has that as well.
AI generated.
It does. Yeah, it does feel like basically someone typed into AI. So I want a modern day version of thing where they smoke weed.
Yeah,
they're kind of they're kind of cool. They're kind of but they're like really cool. Love the kind of thing. But they're modern. Real modern.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They are an Instagram generation. They love this shit, and it's into that. Which makes me sound really old.
It does, you are. And now you have to do that thing they do in Midsummer where the old people jump off the cliff. That's what you have to do.
I'm at that point.
Yeah, that's what
we're done with this podcast. It's time for me to go
to jump to your death. I think that's
as far as we can go.
Yeah.
Spoiler free.
Well, I mean, I hope that if you've watched the film, come and let us know what your thoughts of the film were. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. Come back on Monday where we're going to do a full spoiler thing. We're going to get into the nuts and guts of this film. And we will see you then. Take care. Goodbye.